All right, hello everybody. This is Tim McAleer with my brother, Kevin McAleer, who's an accomplished author with about 9 books on Amazon.com. Get them if you will. I noticed a little idiosyncrasy on my film here. It says Timothy at dslextreme.com. Sorry about that double Timothy. I just saw that when I logged on. I'll have to learn to get rid of the one Timothy there and keep the other Timothy there. At any rate, Kevin and I do book chats on various forms of literature. We've done quite a bit in the 20th century. We've done a little bit in the 19th century. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Edith Wharton was the beginning of the 20th century. Kevin will get us some exact years on her life and on her artistry and all that stuff. But for now, I just want to, Kevin suggested this story, and I would like to know why, or at least did you like it? Because apparently you had never read it before, did you, Kevin?
I suggested it because I had started it many years back. I own the book, most of these books that we talk about, because I'm such a cheapskate, are books I have in my bookcase, but I have not read all of them, or I've read them only partially, and not through to a conclusion. And those are the ones that we have on occasion on our little podcast here discussed. The books that I didn't quite finish, that I wanted to finally have a reason to finish because they're classics. I couldn't get through Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. Her dates 1862 to 1937. She straddles the late 19th and early 20th centuries perfectly.
Yes.
You have 38 years on one side of the century, then 37 plus
right
on the other. And Ethan Frome, 1911, published by Scribner's. I think it first came out in a serial with Scribner's magazine. Not sure about that, but it published by Scribner's, 1911. And it's the one book of hers that most people, whether they're cognoscenti or not, will associate with her name. And I have to read it, I thought to myself. I have to finally get through this thing. And it's a very, very short novel. You could read it in one sitting if you were of a mind. It took me 2 or 3 because her prose is a bit sluggish at times. It's not James M. Cain, but what is? And it's sort of old style of Victorian era prose. But I will say this, there's a couple sidebars before I finally get to your question in full, answering it in full. I went back to some of her earlier stuff, some of her short stories, which she first published in 1899 as a book. And that is really florid, very Baroque sort of English as opposed to American prose, more like Henry James. But here, just 12 years later, she is writing a fairly clean and bare bones prose, and it's perhaps owing to the setting. She talks about the granite. She does, in my edition, there's a little introduction by her to Ethan Frome, where she talks about the granite outcroppings of this environment that is the setting for Ethan Frome, which is Western Massachusetts, where she, in her first marriage, spent a lot of time with her husband. Vacation home, let's just say it, she was from a very wealthy, old money New York family. She stayed in that world pretty much all her life, excepting for when she moved to Europe. I think about 1907, she moved to France. But occupying that sort of transatlantic Bostonian / New York old money world, which I have to tell you, I have very little interest in. But this is a point in Miss Wharton's favor, and also Henry James's favor. When you get him on a good book, I think some of his are atrocious. We might want to talk about Henry James at some point, because I have some very, very strong opinions about him,
Okay.
pro and con. But this is the world she occupies, the Henry James world. And if a Henry James, for example, in a novel like Portrait of a Lady, which is very long, rather turgid at points, 600 pages, but I got through it, and my final verdict on that when I finished it was I liked it, all right? Even if it's not my kind of writing, and it's not a milieu, it's one of my favorite words, a milieu that I am interested in, really. Just not. But he interests you in it, is the point. That's the mark of an excellent writer, that he can take a subject that you have no deep felt interest in, but you say, oh, what the heck, you crack it and you go a few pages, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to keep going here. That's the same thing that she does with Ethan Frome, Miss Wharton, right? So she got me through this world, which again, well, not again, but the first time for our viewers, it's not this old East Coast sort of patrician American world. It's not at all. It's about the poor in the countryside, speaking very ungrammatical English. She condescends to put some very unelevated English into their mouths. I guess she knew these people. She was able to do that. And that's another thing I will say about types like Henry James and Edith Wharton, although I don't have a natural affinity to them, is that you get to hear how people talk. That's always interesting to me, right? I'm sure they are true to the speech patterns of the people that they are portraying in their books. That's always very interesting to me. And another thing is, this is like sidebar after sidebar, but it helps you to revisit vocabulary that we in the early 21st century have lost. It's like, oh yeah, right. I remember reading that word when I was a kid, reading Melville or whatever. It's like, okay, good. This is now something that kind of awakens your interest just on a linguistic level. So,
okay.
I wanted to read this finally to a conclusion. Ethan Frome, and as I say, she turned the trick this time. She interested me in a world that otherwise, I don't care about Eastern Massachusetts at the turn of the century, poor people with their struggles and whatnot. But she did interest me, and we can just cut to the chase. I liked it. I can recommend the book to people, and at very least, you can, if not enjoy it, the lack of enjoyment will be very short-lived, because it's about 80, 90 pages or so in my edition. It's not an arduous read at all.
It's interesting that it's a naturalistic novel or novella, such as we've seen with Stephen Crane, and who else does natural? Well, Hemingway does naturalism later on. There's quite a few naturalists out there, and she's not one of them, because you told, as you said, she deals with the old money New York aristocracy, the same world inhabited by Henry James, as you mentioned. So it's a surprise to get such a gritty, tough, visceral naturalism in her oeuvre, which I don't think you get that anywhere else within her other books. Are you familiar with, you know what I'm talking about, the naturalism, right, Kev?
Sure.
Yeah. She doesn't do that elsewhere, I don't believe.
Not in this setting. She doesn't. No.
Okay.
This is definitely a one-off. It seems to me. I mean, I have read other things of her. As I say, I went back to these short stories. I read a half dozen short stories pre Ethan Frome. I have read what's it called? I have it right here.
She's got the House of Mirth, the House of Mirth, and the Age of Innocence are her two.
I have both those books. I have both those books, by the way, and
Have
I will
them?
read them. Yeah, I'll read them at some point, I suppose. But the one I'm referring to is I read an autobiography of hers called A Backward Glance, which she wrote toward the end of her life. It's nonfiction, and I found it very amusing. She can be very funny when she wants. She can be very satirical. And there's one episode in Ethan Wharton that I can perhaps read, not now, but where she gets very satirical on us after a very solemn narrative. In the middle of everything, she's starting to crack jokes, as it were. Maybe you didn't even notice it. I did.
Huh. I don't think I did notice that. Are you talking about the little epilogue that she puts at the end?
Does she put an epilogue at the end?
Well, you have the tragedy, and then there's one final chapter kind of summarizing what it all meant from then on.
Right. No, I'm not referring to that. We'll get to it later. It's not of paramount importance. Right. But what I think we should do at this point, just give people a very short summary of the story.
Okay.
And it's easily told. It's simple. It's not Henry James, as it were. It's not Raymond Chandler, that's for sure. You have a character who's the titular character, Ethan Frome, and this is about 1890, late 1880s, I think. Or wait a second, that's when the main action takes place. But the book opens, let's say, in the year that it was published, 1911. Again, we're out in the Massachusetts countryside. And this Ethan Frome character, he's a poor farmer, he has a mill, he hauls lumber to neighboring farms. He does a little bit of this and that to make ends meet, but the farm has seen much better days. And he himself he has a limp. He has had some horrific accident that is veiled in mystery, at least for us, the readers, and for the narrator, who, by the way, has no name. The narrator is a male engineer who has come to this part of Massachusetts to work at some power plant. It's very, it's not detailed in any real way what's going on, but he is just the device for telling the story. And he, at one point, is chauffeured to work every day in the middle of winter by this Ethan Frome, right? And this is still in the age where they had horses, pulling wagons, and in this case, a sleigh, right? Because they're going through snow. And this Ethan Frome is very taciturn. He has very little to say about his about anything, let alone his past. And one night, Ethan is chauffeuring this unnamed narrator to his work and then back. And on the way back, it's just a snowstorm of epic proportions, and Ethan can't get him back home. And so what he does is he says, well, look, I guess you're going to have to spend the night at my place. And so they descend from the sleigh and they walk into Ethan's home. And the narrator hears some querulous, droning voice, I think, are the adjectives used by Miss Wharton, a female voice, and they are about to open the door to see what this querulous, droning voice is. Then the narration cuts, ... And then we get into Ethan Frome's story. All right, so it's told in flashback, and it's told by this unnamed narrator. We don't have an omniscient narrator all of a sudden, although this unnamed narrator seems to be omniscient. It's a problem I have with the book. It's a big problem. And she knows it's a problem because in the introduction, she addresses this, right? And what she basically says is, because this unnamed narrator, he never gets the full story. He's only gotten little indications, and he never gets the full story, little spoiler alert, from Ethan Frome. It's not as if that night Ethan and he sit down and Ethan tells him his story. No, not at all. This narrator is painting the picture that he has in his own mind from what he has heard from this or that source in the town, and voila, this is his story. And it's an extremely detailed story. It's as if it's been written by God himself, right? He sees all, hears all. And then we come to the end of Ethan Frome's story, which I will tell our viewers in a moment. And then we flash ahead, and in this case, it's 24 years. So we flash back 24 years, and then we flash ahead 24 years. We're back into this Ethan Frome's house in 1911, and the narrator and Ethan Frome pushing through the door into the parlor, the kitchen, wherever it is. And we see what this droning, querulous voice is. All right. So it's a framing technique, but it's not waterproof. I think it's got a couple leaks in it. I don't know what you think. You're nodding. Did that disturb you at all?
No, I didn't even notice it really. I read an introduction. I think it was by her, but I didn't really pick that up in the text of the story. Perhaps I was reading too quickly, trying to get through it for our talk here.
Yeah. Well. So
you're saying she messes with the narrative voice. You're saying?
Well, she's telling us too much information that some unnamed narrator who just got a little bit of gossip from this woman and that woman, and then sees the querulous droning voice in the room, and then the other woman. Another spoiler alert: there's two women. And then he has pieced the story together for us in incredible detail. I don't buy it. I thought it was weak. I would have just gone with an omniscient narrator. You don't have to give us any attempt at realism, like how can some omniscient narrator know all this? Well, that's the definition of an omniscient narrator. They just do. That's a technique used by authors in novels, Tolstoy, all the rest who employ that device. She could have just cut at that point where she does, and then not have the unnamed narrator at this point pick up the narration. Just tell it, and then we go back. We go forward 24 years, and we push through the door, and we see the result of this whole tale of Ethan Frome and his tragedy, and that's what the narrator sees, right? So we have him as a device to get us into Ethan Frome's house, and then to see what the fruits of his actions in this flashback narrator section are, right?
Right.
We don't have to justify it. I think she's turning herself into knots. Maybe she's read too much Henry James, who likes that device. He likes to have the guy, the third person narrator, telling the story, but only from his perspective. Here we get into the thoughts of everyone. The narrator's dipping into the thoughts of everything. So I think it's a fault of the structure of the novel. But the story now, folks, is this. Ethan Frome, again, he's a poor farmer. So we're back 24 years before 1911, right? Where's that put us? 1887. And his mother, he was supporting his mother. Apparently his father at some point was not around. I forget what happened. Ethan Frome is supporting his mother, trying to keep the farm going. His mother dies, and she is nursed in her final days, weeks, years, I don't know, I forget, by this woman named Zenobia, Zena for short. And in short, because Ethan, he grows fond of her, they develop a close relationship, if only by dint of the nursing that this Zenobia does for his mother. And he feels obligated to her as well. Because apparently she's not in such a she's not so well set up financially and otherwise. So he proposes marriage, and they get married out of this sense of obligation he has toward her. Well, it's a very unhappy marriage. The nurse now becomes the patient. She's chronically sick. One of her hobbies seems to be to figure out the next medicine or next treatment she's going to take for her sickness. She doesn't work at all. She just hangs out in the house and complains. Very objectionable character. She's described that way. And Ethan has this, burden to bear of supporting both him and her, this woman that he now has grown to resent. And she probably doesn't like him any better. So it's a poisonous relationship. Shortly after their marriage, invited into the household is this young girl named Mattie. I don't know how old she is. She's probably 20, early 20s, something like that, because she's a cousin of Zena's. And I guess Zena, despite her faults, she has a certain generous character to her. She insists, maybe over Ethan's initial protests, it's not clear, but that they take in this Mattie. All right. Because Mattie's family's poor. I think she's an orphan at some point, whatever. She, again, needs some help. So they take her in, give her a room. She does a little bit of this and that around the house. Well, you can see it coming, folks. Ethan and Mattie fall in love. Did you see it coming? Okay.
Yes, sir.
They fall in love. And now this is the conflict. Every great novel has a great conflict. This is a good one. What are they going to do? Well, things come to a head one day when, the day before, or 2 days before, I think, Zena goes off to consult with some doctor regarding her present illness, imagined or real. And Mattie and Ethan are alone on the farm for a good couple days. Well, they have a nice dinner together. Mattie prepares a nice meal, and in preparing the nice meal, she has taken down some nice china and silverware from the cabinet. In particular, what is described as a pickle dish. I guess they had special dishes for pickles back then. Yeah. And it's a pickle dish that was given to Xena, maybe as a wedding present, I forget exactly, by a favorite aunt or something, and it's on the top shelf. You have to get on the ladder to get it, but Hattie is aware of this, and she wants to now use it to make this nice meal for Ethan, whom she's, of course, very fond of, and Ethan very fond of her. So they kind of celebrate with this pickle dish. Well, as luck would have it, the cat, they got a cat there running around. The cat jumps on the table and knocks the pickle dish off the table, and it shatters. Oh my goodness, what is Xena going to think when she returns? Oh my goodness, what now? Well, Ethan, he plays the man. He says, "Stand aside," and he puts it together in a fashion that when he puts it, so it didn't break into a million pieces, it just broke into some chunks, I guess. And he kind of pieced it back together, climbs up on the ladder, goes to the top of the shelf, and puts it back on the top shelf behind the other stuff. Hopefully because she never takes it down, right? It's so precious to her, Xena, this pickle dish. So maybe she'll go up there and she'll see it, but she won't touch it, and it'll remain intact until he can go into town the next day, or whenever he gets into town next, to buy some glue. They don't got any glue on the farm. So he has done this. Mattie feels better. In fact, there's a nice line that I could maybe read here. And I'm reading it because this is sort of an insight into his character. Because as I will argue at some point in our little talk, I think Ethan is a victim of what Nietzsche would call the slave morality. And I'll just talk about it now, right? Why not? Slave morality is not something that Edith Wharton addresses explicitly, but I think implicitly it's just this whole novel is rife with it. Friedrich Nietzsche, Genealogy of Morals, he talks about the slave morality. Now that is what he associated often, though it's not exclusive to, Christianity, right? Now I'm not going to pick on Christianity here, but just to give you guys a certain handle on it, what Nietzsche felt was wrong with Christianity, and by the way, he was the son of a pastor, so maybe there's a little bit of youthful rebellion going on here. Kill the father. Slave morality was this idea that those people who cannot express their will to power in a direct fashion, right, by being strong, courageous, life-affirming, prideful, right, those old-fashioned Greek virtues that made for arete and eudaimonia and all these other states, desired states, that if you couldn't do it in a direct way, because you weren't that kind of person, or you were just physically incapable or psychologically, then you would term those traits of the strong wicked traits. And the traits that you possess, humility, patience, compassion, self-sacrifice, meekness, self-effacement, basically, to sum it up, they become virtues, right? And the source of this slave morality is in resentment. Resentment against the powerful. Those who don't have a slave morality, they have a master morality, right? And this is the way that the poor in spirit retaliate against those against whom they can otherwise not at the level of the master morality. So they redefine their own weakness as a moral virtue. And so slave morality, to sum up, it's essentially a morality that is the psychological response to powerlessness. Now, if anyone is powerless in this novel, it's Ethan Frome, right? But I would argue it's of his own making, okay? And this passage now here
Kevin,
that I read.
I got to tell you one thing before you continue. I just got a pop-up menu on my video saying that I'm running out of time and I have to upgrade to another level to get more time. And I don't know why that's there. I'll have to find out later, but this could suddenly stop at any time. I just want to let the viewers know that. And it's not
All
that,
right.
yeah, so keep
That's
going.
where it goes.
Hopefully we'll make the hour, but if it suddenly stops, thank you for listening. We'll have some good stuff for you next time as well as what we're doing here. So Kevin, go ahead and start reading Edith Wharton.
Talk about pressure. All right. So when the pickle dish cracks and he puts it back together, and he takes command of the situation. Why? Well, because Zena's not there. He can play the man, even if it's in this little way. And Edith Wharton writes, having satisfied himself that there was no risk of immediate discovery, after he puts it together and puts it on the top of the cabinet and behind the other stuff, he went back to the kitchen with a lighter step and found Mattie disconsolately removing the last scraps of pickle from the floor. "It's all right, Matt," says Ethan. "Come back and finish supper." He commanded her. Right, so I'll read it again. "It's all right, Matt. Come back and finish supper," he commanded her. Whoa, he commanded her. That's not Ethan Frome usually. He doesn't command people, right? Completely reassured, Mattie, she shone on him through tear-hung lashes, and his soul swelled with pride as he saw how his tone subdued her. She did not even ask what he had done, except when he was steering a big log down the mountain to his mill. He had never known such a thrilling sense of mastery. Now, I would argue that unbeknownst to our authoress, Miss Wharton, she is giving us a perfect example of a man who has been subject all his life to the slave morality, feeling his oats with the master morality, if only for a brief shining moment, because that will change very quickly. I wanted to get that in. So, Ethan, back to the story. That night, after Ethan and Hattie have their little tete-a-tete, nothing happens physically. I think at one point Ethan is he has the temerity to raise up a little piece of fabric that is resting on the table that Mattie is knitting or sewing, and he raises it to his lips. He doesn't kiss her, he kisses the fabric, and that's enough to spook her and say, "Oh, I gotta go," right? So this is still very Victorian, right? It has its charms, but that's what happens there. The next day, Zena arrives. She has had a very enlightening, shall we say, encounter with the doctor she has sought out. He has told her that she has to basically be confined to bed and get a girl to help her to do things around the house. Apparently, I initially thought that Mattie was that girl, but apparently Mattie doesn't do a lot of stuff. Okay, so now they have to get someone who's going to be a real worker, and they don't have enough room in the house, so they got to move Mattie out. And on top of that, now Ethan has to come up with the money to pay for this thing, right? And this is now our crisis situation, right? And what Ethan has to now decide is whether he bows to Zena's wishes, because she gets her way in the long run. And so he's back to being beholden to slave morality. He bows to her wishes. Now he has to figure out, okay, good. Mattie must go, but maybe I'll go with her. Hey, how's that for an idea? All right. Okay, the problem is he needs some money. He doesn't have any money. What he then decides is that he'll try a neighbor of his to whom he's delivering some lumber, that he will ask him if he can get an advance on the $50. Okay, $50 was a lot of money back then, right? Multiply it by 20, 30, whatever you want. 50 in the countryside there. A lot of money that would give him a grub stake that he could then take off with Mattie and live happily ever after, right? Well,
okay, let me just break in and tell the viewers there's a big spoiler alert right here that Kevin's going to explain to us. So if you don't want to know the ending, just tune out for a minute or so, and then we'll be back to other topics. What happens at the end there, Kev?
So what happens is that he chickens out. He sort of indicates to this fellow, his name's Andrew Hale, a neighboring farmer, carpenter. But this Hale gives Ethan to understand that, well, he's not doing too well these days either. And so he chickens out from, pressing his request. I think he sort of indicates it, then backs off. Well, he is then a little bit of time elapsed, and then he's heartened by the notion that, well, he'll pay it back, of course, if he gets the advance, or the fellow's going to get the lumber. I don't know what the thought processes are, but he decides to try it again, and he goes into town where he wants to meet up with this Andrew Hale again. But on the way there, he meets then Mrs. Hale in a sleigh. It's snowing still, right? Lots of snow drifts. It's driven by her son, and she sees Ethan, and they hail each other. Mrs. Hale hails Ethan. Ethan hails Mrs. Hale, and they talk. And in this little exchange, she expresses a great deal of sympathy for his plight. She doesn't even know about him being in love with Mattie, but she knows that he's had a hard time of it all his life, that he's maybe Mr. Hale mentioned something to her about his request or attempted request. And so she gives him a little bit of compassion. And this is on his way to go to try and make a second attempt at getting the money from Mr. Hale. Well, after the son, takes off with the horse, gives him a little lash, the horses take off with the sleigh. Ethan says, I can't do it. I can't do it. Why? Because he would be requesting the money under false pretenses. Because what his plan was at this point is to say to Mr. Hale, well, I know you're not doing too well, but I would really appreciate the money because Zena is very sick and we need to hire a girl. I need the money, and Mattie's going to be going. That's not the reason. He wants to run off with Mattie. So he doesn't find it within his own moral matrix to make that request. It's on false pretenses. And the whole time I'm thinking, just do it. This is before the climax, which we will divulge shortly. This is before the tragedy happened. This is before the tragedy that all this indecision and slave morality on his part leads to. I'm just saying, just do it. Now, what do you think, Tim, in the other books we've read in the past? For example, The Postman Always Rings Twice. We mentioned James M. Cain.